If you wish to get a feel for ancient Mesopotamian worship, if you're akin to esoteric poetry and want to understand how the goddess Sin influenced the religious culture even to this day, stay tuned. Welcome to Bibliocultist, where I review books that I find interesting in the topics of religion, philosophy, history, and fiction. Please remember to subscribe to the channel, click the bell for notifications, like the video, share the video, comment on the video, and don't forget to follow me on X. I tend to post a lot of different things there, and it's easy to interact with me if you want to in that format. In this episode, I'm going over the book Lioness Song of Inana by Samuel Davis. This particular edition is from Grail Press 2022. It is indeed a numbered edition. And one of the things that attracted me to the book was not only the topic, which I love, but the format of the book. I think it's a very beautifully crafted work in itself. So obviously, like I always say, you can get your own edition. If they have a paperback, no problem. But if you can get this particular format, you're really going to enjoy it. As a visual, artistic expression of the book, it's actually very good. Now, this small book collects a few of the oldest known poems and religious writings of Inanna, the daughter of King Sargon of Akkad, and she is considered to be the oldest self-attributed author in history. So that in itself makes it a fascinating work to possess. Now, it's not the full collection of her writings, but it fits into the topic of the devotion to Inanna, because as a priestess, she was primarily a religious author. So this is really a devotional work, and it's structured in a way that fits that mood. And I think it beautifully captures the feel of that devotion to this particular goddess that, unfortunately, in this day and age is not well known. This goddess was also known as Sin and possesses a wonderfully dual nature. She is known for being a goddess of war, but also a goddess of passion, of love. A lot of the reading of this work reminded me and made me think of Durga, Devi in India. And I think some of you that might be familiar with this other goddess will probably agree, because a lot of the imagery, the symbols, the characteristics are quite close. Now, I don't like freely making associations with historical entities because it lends itself to a lot of chicanery. For example, the other name for this goddess, like I said, is pronounced Sin. But Sin is written like sin. And I've read before many years back that the word sin came from this goddess Sin, which is Inanna. And this is actually etymologically incorrect, but it sounds interesting, and therefore people tend to just go with it. I tend to be as cautious as I can be on this topic, because I don't think it's fair to the historical reality of what I am dealing with. And sometimes I will make connections between one kind of religious practice and the other. And I think in general terms, this is acceptable, because as a reader in modern times, the best thing I can do to understand something from the ancient world is to analogically connected to things that I understand. So I don't think it's wrong to do that, but we have to be cautious to not go from just relating things to each other and making straight connections and linking them up and then getting to conclusions out of it. And as you will see in my further remarks, I will make a connection between Inanna and Ishtar and even the Virgin Mary, but again, it doesn't mean that one stems from the other. That would be fallacious. In the book, you have a lot of beautiful poetry that exalts the personality of the goddess Inanna. So I'm going to read at least a few of them. "Speak, O Holy One, that I may know your majesty." Then she responds, "I am the axis and the crux upon which the world turns. I am the princely one who ordains destinies and decrees fate. For my voice is the command of Anu, Enki, and Enlil. I am the falcon among the sparrows. The gods flee before me as I rise up from my throne." So right there, that's an awesome imagery, and also a claim of authority over the other gods of the Mesopotamian pantheon. So that theologically is interesting. Let me read another part. "Speak, O fearsome one, that I may know of your power." She responds, "I dress for action like a man. My breasts and my hips are clad in the armor of men's might. I dress for battle like a prince. My hands and my feet are carnelian, and the scent of iron fills my nostrils. I dress for war like a king. My lips are as crimson, and within my mouth is the roar of heaven." So right there you can tell and feel the mood of the goddess. She reminds me of Athena, and like I said, of Durga Devi, the divine feminine as a absolute power of maternity, of defense of her children, but at the same time of love and of lust. And just being able to connect to the devotional mood of an ancient priestess is a very cool experience, just from a personal point of view. Now, when it comes to a deeper reflection beyond the book itself, the author explores the dualistic nature of Inanna, a goddess who embodies both creation and destruction, love and war, light and shadow. Her descent into the underworld is one of the most powerful myths ever told, and I've discussed this in other reviews. It is a story that echoes across cultures and time. Her legacy and her later counterpart, because she's related to Ishtar, which is her Akkadian manifestation, if you will, is quite important, and in my opinion, you see faint echoes in the figure of the Virgin Mary in Christianity as well, taking into consideration all the other caveats I mentioned. Now, these goddesses are not comforting goddesses, they're sovereigns of power and forces that operate on scales beyond human morality. This is important because of how paganism is perceived in the modern world. Their duality is a duality of life and death, how they're inseparable, that you cannot split them up into dualistic conceptions. They contain dualism, but they're also dualism in unity. To summon them would be to also summon danger. It's not just a goddess of protection, but there's also a danger in invoking them. So each invocation carries its downside as well. And I can understand why it was a fearsome experience to contend with a goddess like Inanna in the ancient world. Now, I know that the Virgin Mary is worlds apart in some sense from these ancient goddesses, but there are subtle parallels. If you look closely, Mary does occupy a liminal space in Christian theology, the Mother of God, mediator between humanity and divinity, much like Inanna once bridged that gap between heaven and earth. And there's also an acknowledgement of suffering and sacrifice that is also central to Inanna's mythos. If you remember the famous Pietà, the image of Mary cradling the body of Christ down from the cross, broken, there is a similar imagery of Inanna mourning over Dumutsi, Ishtar weeping over Tammuz. There's the weight of loss and renewal. There's a feminine power in this dynamic that these days is rejected because of the fear of delineating the real differences between men and women and their divine component, which is an important theological reality that every spiritual practice in the history of mankind has clearly outlined, because they are forces of the universe. Now again, I'm not suggesting that these figures are somehow related in a lineage and one is a copy of the other. Not at all. I'm just simply pointing out a very interesting connection. They represent the eternal dance of opposites, the tension between light and dark, the abyss of the unknown, how the eternal is a cipher that we must engage with and somehow attempt to crack open to understand ourselves and humanity itself. So, in general, the book forces you to engage in the devotional experience of an ancient devotee, and that to me is always valuable. And the book itself is a very beautiful manifestation of art, so it's a very short book. You can read it in a few minutes actually, but I still wanted to do a review of it because I think it does open a bit the desire to explore and reflect on the nature of the ancient gods and how they relate to us this day. And of course, because it's such a short book, I expect it to be a short review. So hopefully you enjoyed it and you can derive some benefit out of it, and you find a copy of the book, or at least it encourages you to go out there and research Enheduanna, which is a fascinating personality of the ancient world. It has left us quite an important legacy of the connection between books, poetry, and the eternal. Please remember to subscribe to the channel, click the bell for notifications, like the video, share the video, comment on the video. I would really appreciate your support. Thank you for being with me. See you next time.